It's week 8, day 55 of my full-time chronic pain rehabilitation journey. I'm Jason, and today I'm going to talk about a common thread that's run throughout my journey, and that is bringing online the most important part of my brain. At the end of the video, I'm also going to share a quick tip about how to have a more intense resistance workout. But first, a quick status update. I feel sick. I slept in and I just never came online this morning. I'm really tired. There are a couple possible causes here. It could be the dietary change I made this week. It could also be the fact that my back's kind of hurting. I'm just not sure. But hopefully it'll be gone tomorrow morning. That's what I'm hoping. I do have a personal best to report on the decline squat this week. I went from 14 repetitions at 310 pounds to 12 repetitions at 315. So I'm slowly inching up as my body allows me to. All right, on to the important topic of the day, which is how to light up the most important part of your brain and how to do it routinely. So in case you're not aware, there are two important areas of the brain. Actually, all of the parts of the brain are important, but these two are particularly significant to us. So the prefrontal cortex, which is right in the front of your forehead, is what we could call the higher or the adult brain, and it's what does all long-term planning. It's what keeps us kind of calm and allows us to deliberate and take deliberate action. It can be accessed through things like prayer and meditation, even sleep. Can strengthen it. And then there's another part of our brain which we call the lower brain or the child brain, which is technically named the amygdala, and it's between our ears. And this part of our brain is more primitive and is very impulsive. So kids under 5 years, I have some experience with this, my daughter's 4, are very impulsive. Why? Because the connection between their prefrontal cortex and their amygdala is not there. And so they're just impulsive. They don't really think, they just act, they do things. And that's great when you're first kind of exploring the world and you have parents to act as safeguards so you don't kill yourself. But obviously if that part of the brain is running the show, you're in danger, right? You're not going to be your best self. But as you become an adult, the connection between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala strengthens over time. In your teenage years, it's sort of there, sort of not. By the time you hit around 20, I think it's fully formed. Anyway, so there are activities you can do to transfer most of the control in your brain to the prefrontal cortex and suppress the amygdala. And I want to talk about that really quick. So, what are the things you can do to put the prefrontal cortex in the driver's seat? I've alluded to a couple of them, but one of the most important, and probably the most important, is to have a good night's sleep. People who don't sleep well essentially are suppressing their prefrontal cortex and allowing the amygdala to take over. So the next day they eat things they don't want to, they go off diet, they don't go to the gym, their emotions just run the show, and they're typically not happy. So that's why sleep hygiene is so incredibly important, and getting a good night's sleep is so incredibly important because it brings your prefrontal cortex online. It allows it to exercise top-down control over the amygdala and keep you in the driver's seat. What other things might do that? Well, I started a routine called Miracle Morning by a man named Hal Elrod, and there's an acronym for the activities you do every morning. It's called SAVERS. It stands for silence, affirmations, visualizations, exercise, reading, and scripting. Well, all of those activities do one important thing. They bring your prefrontal cortex more online. They light it up. If you took an MRI and scanned your brain while you're doing these things, it would light up the prefrontal cortex, which means essentially you're bringing your brain, it's almost like you turned on your computer in the morning, right? It boots up and then everything's operational. You get the Windows Hello screen, boom, you're online. The earlier you can do that in the day, the better for you because it puts you in control and it puts you in the driver's seat. The longer you wait to do those sorts of activities, the more likely it is that you're not going to be in the driver's seat. This all corresponds to something I learned when I went to a seminar in Salt Lake City. The person who hosted it taught me a bunch of what she called jumpstart routines. And there are things like coloring in a coloring book. Just the act of concentration of trying to stay in the lines on a semi-complicated drawing and color in every little area is actually lights up your prefrontal cortex. So does singing. Sometimes so does going outside and taking a walk in nature. There are a bunch of activities that can just light that baby up. And what you want to do in your life is routinely and strategically do those things to make sure that your prefrontal cortex is 1, in control, and 2, fully online. And another way to do that is to have a non-inflammatory diet. Any kind of inflammation can actually suppress the prefrontal cortex's ability to regulate the amygdala, which you don't want. And you don't want the amygdala to be in control. So any kind of inflammation in your body can actually limit your ability to control yourself. So here's where diet becomes a really important part of keeping the prefrontal cortex in the driver's seat, keeping you in the driver's seat. Some people speculate, like Sam Harris, that we have no real agency. We're really kind of automatons controlled by our environment. I sympathize with his view because I do recognize that there are lots of influences and controls and environmental impacts on what we do. We're not totally in control. And where can we actually exercise agency? This is where I think you can find it. You can't really change your prefrontal cortex, you can't really change your amygdala, but what you can do is take certain deliberate actions to make sure that the prefrontal cortex is more in control, more dominating. And so having a bedtime routine, having a morning routine, and doing these very strategic activities to light up the prefrontal cortex, to me, that's how we exercise our agency. That's what puts us in control. That's the degree of volition that we as human beings have. And we need to exercise it as much as possible because we can't fight if we're not in the driver's seat. All right, now for that tip that I have for you. So when you're working out with resistance or weights, you can do what are called supersets. And it keeps it makes it more intense basically. So what you do is you find two opposing muscle groups, say like your chest and your back. Right? They're on opposite sides of your body, and you work them out, one set chest, one set back, right in sequence. So the minute you're done with a set of exercises for your chest, you jump to your back and you do another set of exercises right in your back. And those two together form a single set. So it just increases the level of cardiovascular activity and the intensity of the workout, and it's also more efficient. So that's one way that you can increase your workout efficiency and intensity is by using supersets, opposing muscle groups, sets back to back. Fighting for your life means learning to live in your prefrontal cortex, your higher brain, turning it on, lighting it up, putting it in control. You can't fight when your amygdala, your lower brain, is calling the shots. It's not rocket science to put your prefrontal cortex in the driver's seat, but it does require some discipline. And the strategic time to exercise that discipline is in the morning and every night. Have you found ways to bring your prefrontal cortex online? How do you suppress your amygdala so you're the one calling the shots? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and remember to keep fighting.